Here again, this is your good buddy Biss. A little different story tonight. About 12 years ago, my girlfriend Paula and I went to Boone, Iowa to see a rock band play that I liked. My friend had the tickets, but at the last minute he couldn't go, so he gave them to me. He also had reservations at a motel and said we could call them to change them to my name. It was winter time and the roads ended up getting slick, but we made it to Boone. We decided not to use the reservations my friend had made, as they were a little farther out of town and really close to the busy interstate. We picked another hotel, checked in, and hung out in our room for a while before venturing out to find the club. Turns out the band had to cancel because of the weather, but we still ended up having a pretty good night. We got back to the motel sometime after 2 a.m. I was sitting on the bed taking off my boots, my famous boots, and Paula was in the bathroom. I could hear her saying something, but the fan was on, so it was muffled. When she came out, she said I wasn't funny for knocking on the wall. I agreed, because I didn't knock on the wall. She kept calling me out, saying she knew I was the one doing it. I just looked at her and asked, why would I knock on the bathroom wall? I walked over and pounded my boot on the wall. She looked at me like I was stupid and said, no, not that one, the other one. She was pointing through the bathroom to the other wall. One I didn't have access to. I mentioned this to her, and she kind of turned around and surveyed the situation and realized what she had said about me banging on the wall suddenly made no sense. She said it must have been some a-hole next door. I agreed, and we dropped it. For too long, she wanted ice, so I grabbed the bucket and headed to the ice machine, filled it up, and went back to the room. While sliding my key card, I noticed something strange. We had the last room in the hallway next to where the exit was. The distance from our door to the end of the hall was probably the exact distance from the same point in our room to the wall that someone had banged on. I went inside and sat down the ice bucket and told Paula what I had figured out. She said if they kept banging on that wall, she would call the front desk. I wasn't too worried about her. If they came back, I could be out the exit fast enough to catch them. As I got later, Paula was awakened by someone talking. She usually sleeps like a log, so for her to wake up, it was strange. Me, on the other hand, I can't sleep with any noise going on, and I didn't hear anything. She sat up in bed listening for a minute, then laid down next to me, cussing about the voices she heard. A few minutes later, she shot up out of bed, of course waking me up violently too. Why should I sleep, you know? I opened it and ran down the hallway and Sparta kicked the exit door open and flew outside, ready to kill whoever was messing around outside our room. There was no one there. Not only that, there was a foot of snow outside and not a single track in sight except my tracks, which quickly reminded me I was standing outside in below freezing weather, wearing no shoes, and only enough to keep me from getting arrested. I walked back inside, closed the exterior door, and walked back to our room where Paula was standing. She asked if I caught them. I said no one was there. She said she could still hear the voices. I kicked open the door, then they suddenly stopped. She assumed I'd got them. I said no, there was no one there and no signs that anyone was ever outside. She seemed reluctant to accept my claim and went into the bathroom to pee, yet again. It was then I thought I heard muffled voices. Paula freaked out a bit and probably peed on the floor as she tried to get out of the bathroom to tell me she heard it again. I shushed her and tried to figure out where exactly the voices were coming from. It sounded like they were just outside the wall. I got dressed and went outside with my Nokia flip phone and talked to Paula on hers. She could still hear the voices. I made my way along the wall, trying to hear anything at all. I pounded on the wall and asked if she could hear it. She said, hear what? I did it again. She couldn't hear me pounding and kicking the wall. I went back to our room and we continued listening. We could hear two people talking but couldn't make out what they were saying. Next I went onto the hall and listened at every door. I couldn't hear anyone. I took the stairs to the second floor and went from door to door listening for those two voices. Nothing. I was still on the phone with Paula and she was getting freaked out. I told her to meet me at the stairs. We were going to go ask the front desk clerk to find out who was making all that noise and tell them to shut the hell up. The front desk clerk was sitting behind the counter reading her book, and almost jumped out of her skin when I said, "Excuse me." I explained that one of the other guests was being very loud and it was 3 a.m. in the morning and we'd appreciate it if she could do something about it. She looked at me like she could hear the words I said, but they were in a language she didn't understand. She said there were only 4 other rooms booked because of the weather and the other 3 rooms were in a second wing detached from our wing. I know how strange it sounded, but I insisted that someone was talking by our room and I needed to stop or she would have to give us another room. She smiled politely and walked with us back to our room. We went inside and as plain as could be we heard the voices. The girl from the desk stood there and turned her head left and right, trying to focus on the location of the sound. I touched a point on the wall and she focused on it. She said, "Grab all your stuff. I need to get you another room." She almost ran out of the room while I tossed all of our stuff on the bed and wrapped it in the blankets and dragged it along behind me to the front desk. The girl at the desk wasn't even fazed at me standing there like a homeless Santa Claus. She was fumbling with some key cards and trying to get them into the imprinter to program them for another room. She handed them to me and said the number of the room and pointed towards the wing with the other 3 guests. I took the keys and handed her our old keys. Her arm stayed at her side. She didn't even attempt to take the keys from me. I was about to lay them down on the counter and then turned and chucked them into the trash can. She told us to have a pleasant evening and picked up her book and walked into the little office and closed the door. I heard her lock it. We made our way to our new room, went inside, tossed our blanket suitcase against the wall, and went to bed. In the morning, we got our stuff together and went to the front desk to check out. There was an envelope waiting for us. The night clerk had comped our room, and there was a receipt saying my credit card was being credited for the price of the stay and voucher for another night's stay at any of their locations nationwide, which I never used. I asked the morning clerk to thank her for helping us at 3 a.m., but the man said she had quit the moment her shift was over and left without saying another word. I mumbled that she must have been scared of the voices. The clerk's face went blank. He said, "Room 148? I said, "Yes." He just stood there. I said, "Thanks," and he just stared back at me trying to smile. He was terrified. I have no idea what the hell went on in that motel before we got there, but if you're ever in Boone, Iowa, don't stay at the Cobblestone Inn. And if you do, don't let them give you room 148. Okay, well, thanks for listening. See you again tomorrow night.